This episode of Out of Spec Reviews is brought to you by Magna. More on that later. Hello, good morning, and welcome to a beautiful morning here in northern Colorado. Welcome to the Rivian R1T, and welcome to finally the 70 mile per hour highway loop style range test that I run every electric vehicle through. And this time, it's this truck's turn to see how well it performs. I'll first take you on a tour of the truck, tell you about the specifications. I'll then tell you about the testing procedures. Then we'll head out, hit the road, and see how far it goes on a single charge. This is a brand new Rivian R1T. It just clicked over 2,000 miles, so it's a pretty fresh example. In terms of specifications, this is sort of, I guess what they call the large pack, but it's really the middle-sized pack variant, and so 135 kilowatt hours. I'm not sure if that's gross or usable. We'll at least see how many we can pull out of it during this test, and that might give us a little bit of a better idea, because Rivian has just released, finally, a trip computer built into their system so we can see all of the data the truck wants to provide. I ran it through the car wash to get some of the dirt and mud off of it, gave it the extra wax so that it gets a little bit more range. Just joking. I've also set the tire pressures to 38 PSI with, take a look at this, a pretty nifty feature, a onboard air compressor to fill up your tires. So let me open up this little hatch. You can see I can plug a hose into here, set the tire pressure, and boom. I don't even have to go over to Discount Tire or my house and set the pressures. This is the hose that the vehicle comes with. This end goes on the wheel and tire. This end goes into the compressor, and you can use this for a whole host of things. Job site work, you can just use the compressed air if you want. This is just a wheel attachment. Let's talk about spec again. Mid-spec battery, 135 kilowatt hours. When did you ever think that was going to be the middle spec on a vehicle? That is huge. We also have 4 independent motors. Rivian has just announced a new dual motor version that they claim should be even more efficient than this. One thing I also want to point out is we are on the 20-inch all-terrain wheel and tire package, and that is not the most efficient either. The reason, actually, Rivian was kind enough to say, hey, we'll get you a truck. You can do all your testing. First of all, it's just insane that they were like, yeah, take a truck. Also, this early and for this long, we're so thankful to Rivian and the entire team over there. But they also were kind enough to say, hey, we can give you 3 or you have your choice of the 3 wheel and tire options. Basically, they said, what wheels and tires do you want on the truck? And for this test, I think I would have preferred the Aero wheels to give it the best chance. But based off of looking at reservation, ordered vehicles that have come into here in Colorado and talking with a lot of you guys, many people have spec'd these all-terrain tires and wheels. I think they look amazing. It's probably the way I would go on my personal Rivian if I were to order one of these, and that might be happening because I've truly fallen in love with this truck. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it later in the video. It's insanely good. But I have no idea what to expect from efficiency. I've been towing with it. We've been drag racing with it. We've been ripping it around in snow and ice, but I haven't driven it constantly on the highway yet. So this is going to be an interesting experiment because in my eyes, I've just been, beating the heck out of this thing, and it's not very efficient when you drive it like that. So let's set the truck up for the test. We're going to close the tonneau cover. It is power. And one thing I think you should be mindful of if you have this option on your truck is just make sure that the cover is clear and free of rocks and stuff before you open and close it. I think this is really going to help with efficiency though. And since we have it, we are going to deploy the cover. And I think a lot of the early trucks will have it as well. Honestly, I would keep mine closed 90% of the time. It does a pretty good job of not necessarily waterproofing the bed. I haven't run it through high pressure yet. Maybe we should do that. But I will say it rained and snowed and melted and nothing got into the bed with that closed. So really like that. We're also going to use a setting called conserve mode. And what conserve mode does is basically disable the rear motors, and it runs front wheel drive. So you can see here are all of our drive modes. We're going to put it in conserve, and that's going to drop us to the lowest ride height. We also have 2 settings for soft or harsh ride suspension. We'll play around with that. I don't think it's going to affect range too much. In theory, you would think hard ride would give us a little bit better of an advantage, of course. But everything's looking good on this truck. It's a fresh example. I have no idea what it's going to do in this test, literally no clue. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how far it goes on a single charge. So in terms of the testing procedures, I'll walk you through how we set up the test. The first is tire pressures are set. That's usual. The second is warming up the battery pack. And by doing that is I drove it on the highway a little bit on the way over to this DC fast charging station, plugged it in at about 35% state of charge, somewhere around there. And now we're juicing it all the way to 100%. And we're at a ChargePoint CPE 250 unit. You can see here, because even though they're labeled 125 kilowatts, this is a 400 volt class of car. It's actually on the high side. It's closer to 450 volts. I'll have a full in-depth charging review of this truck coming. Basically, it just sits between 80 and 88 kilowatts, you know, basically increasing slowly as the state of charge goes up. So it's going to take an hour and 25 minutes to full charge this thing from 43%. That's what the truck is predicting. And yeah, so we have some time to get some snacks and stuff. But that's the way you have to do a range test, is to warm up the battery pack. Then you have to go on a loop. So you see, we're actually going to go from here in Wellington, Colorado. You know what? I'll show you on the map. This is the Rivian's infotainment system, and I'm truly impressed with it. It is snappy, it is quick, it shows you all of the chargers around, which I think is wonderful. It's really a great unit. I'm super into it. So what we're going to do basically is go from here in northern Colorado, give you an idea. There's Denver. This is where we do most of our range tests here. We're going to go up to Cheyenne, and then over here somewhere into Nebraska, back to Cheyenne, and back to the start point. It's really important that we have the same start and end point with any range test to counteract wind and elevation. Now, the elevation, the mountains are over here. There is some elevation gain and loss throughout this trip. It's not like we're on completely flat land, but it should at least counteract. The big reason today why we really need to be mindful of this, and why this route actually works pretty well, is we have a due east wind, literally following straight with this road directly east. And the reason that it's great to have a head or tailwind is you can counteract it by going the opposite way. So, you know, this is real world testing. We're not in a laboratory condition. I have waited until today for today's weather conditions to do this test. It's currently 45 degrees. It should settle around 48 to 52 today. So reasonable temperatures, nothing too crazy cold. Again, warming up the battery pack with DC fast charging. There is no heat pump in this. I believe it's just a resistive heater. Interestingly, you can turn off all of the temperature climate work and just bring in fresh air. As per our testing procedures, we don't do that. We're just going to run 70 degrees auto or 72. And I might actually take it off of automatic. I don't know if you can hear that, but the fans go a little bit higher than I would like. I'm also going to keep the rear climate off for this test. And that way it's just going to be, you know, an efficient climate control setting, but still with temperature adjustment. Again, we're going to run conserve in the lowest ride height. That'll be front wheel drive with the suspension aired out on the ground. It actually gets super low. It's pretty cool. And that's going to be the test. It should be pretty neat. We're going to run it from when the truck completes at 100% state of charge all the way to 0 until it just about stops moving. And that's how we'll see how far it goes on a single charge. We are just here charging up at 94%. We're doing 30 kilowatts. The real top section of the pack charges pretty slow here. It's got a pretty big taper. And if you stay tuned to this channel, I'll have a full in-depth charging analysis of this truck on a few different chargers, really giving you everything you want to know about charging the Rivian R1T. But let me tell you a little bit more about this truck. 2,098 miles, VIN 1043, large pack, launch edition. Glacier white, interior black mountain, underbody off-road. That's an important one. This does have the skid plates, 20-inch all-terrain tires. You can see I've driven the truck 793.3 miles since I picked it up, and I've averaged 1.4 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, keep in mind, that is not normal usage. That is just ripping this thing, driving it hard, and, you know, towing with it, a lot of towing. So this is not representative of what we'll see today. At least we hope. Yeah, no, this is really, really bad efficiency just because of our use case with the truck, but it's going to get much better. We're going to reset trip B. I really appreciate them having these 2 trips. I wish in the future if they could add from, you know, maybe a 3rd trip, a lifetime would be kind of interesting. And then also another one, which I find really useful is, you know, from last charging session. So it's great on road trips. I can be like, so I don't have to reset every time. I can know from this stretch to this charger, I got this, and then it just automatically resets each time. Tesla has that. It's a great feature, and I think they can implement that really well here. But for just sending a software update and giving us all the info, they got all the stuff we wanted. And yeah, really appreciate them even giving us the total energy used in these trip calculations. Pretty good. We are now at 99% state of charge. It's almost done charging. Let's make sure final preparations are good to go. Everything looks good. We got the tonneau cover closed. By the way, all the gaps on this truck, everything lines up really nice, I have to say. The only thing that is a little bit interesting, not from a gap perspective, is to take this panel on and off to get to the trailer hitch is a little bit of an awkward process. Not too bad, but you have to get pretty deep under the truck with a flathead screwdriver. I put some of our gear in the gear tunnel inside here. I can show you just a couple little things in there. Love that storage area. Lots of storage in this truck. So as soon as we hit 100%, let's unplug, get going. Have the climate control set right now so it pulls from the charger the juice to cool down the cab to where it wants to be, and then we'll do this thing. We have just completed charging here. The truck is predicting 276 miles in all-purpose general mode. We're gonna try it in, obviously, conserve mode. You don't actually have to close this flap, but we're going to. Everything looks good. Everything's nice and tight. This might be the only little thing that can be pushed down a little bit. Doesn't really matter. The door handles will go flush once the car is locked. Let's do a couple things. We need to log the odometer, 2,098 miles, just in case the trip calculation fails. We'll wait for that to reset. There we go. Now we're going to put the truck into drive modes, vehicle on, conserve, ride in soft for now, lowest ride height for efficiency, climate control on. Between 68 and 72 is what I normally run. Let's make sure the rear is off. I think we are. I can shut these vents off actually. How about that? We just need that for me, really. That's all the vents I need. But we do need climate control, and rear is off. Let's put it in reverse. Put it in reverse, Terry. Let's go. This episode is proudly brought to you by Magna. Magna is a mobility technology company that is super unique because they touch every aspect of almost every car on the market, especially a lot of electric vehicles, and they even can produce vehicles from the ground up. Now, you may remember I shot a series just recently testing some of their new electric vehicle powertrains, so stay tuned for a lot of Magna content to come. We're going to be going in depth with some really interesting topics with these guys, and Out of Spec wants to thank Magna for sponsoring this review and tons of other videos to come right here on Out of Spec. We look forward to working with Magna to define and find out what the future of mobility looks like. The truck is projecting 293 miles, right there, and you can see big regen limit, which means we really are full charge. There's not much top buffer, and a big power limit because it's just front wheel drive in this mode. So let's head out. We have the lights just in auto mode. Everything is good. The live stream, folks, is going. We have regen in high, but of course on the highway that setting won't really affect anything. But I would like to recapture as much regeneration before we use friction brakes. The brake pedal doesn't seem to blend friction brakes. It just, basically brake pedal is straight friction. All the regen is off the accelerator pedal. But even here, it has one pedal driving. So even with a full charge, it goes to 0 miles per hour, stop and go, and then it'll put it in hold mode. So no change to sort of the driving at 100% state of charge to normal. But I will say your regen, we should try to see if it gives you a lot once you're moving. So my guess is it's very much like Tesla calibration, because if I lift off fully here, yeah, not much regen, and I got to blend with the friction brake. Anyway, let's merge onto the highway as normal. We're going to get up to 70 miles per hour at the end of the on-ramp, as we always do. And this is going to be actually 73 indicated here on the screen is 70 GPS. So we're going to lock the driver assistance at 73 miles an hour. I'm going to give you a full tour of the driver assistance in a future video about how it works, but I'll comment on it as well so you can get a good idea of it, at least in this video. We're in the lowest ride height, conserve mode, 52 degrees Fahrenheit leaving. The wind is low right here, and we're going to have a tailwind for the start. Oh, I'm so excited. I genuinely have no idea, genuinely no idea what this truck will do. It's usually I have a pretty good idea when we test cars, but it's the first pickup truck I've ever tested that's electric. So at least in a range test, I drove the EVUM. If you're not familiar with the EVUM, I'll leave a link to that video in the description of this. It's awesome. You got to check that thing out. So we got to hit 70 by the time we hit the end of the on-ramp as per our normal testing procedures. So 68, 69, 70, 1, 2, 3, lock it in at 73. And we are good to go. Let's hope we don't have to come off of our number very much. We already are. We got to get past this Tahoe. And let's go have a good range test, shall we? Should be freaking awesome. I'm so excited. And driver assistance was ready for a second there. Waiting for it to come back on. There we go. Boom. Oh, it says put hands on the wheel first. So it's a capacitive wheel, which is nice. And we're locked in. I'm not going to drive in the left lane the whole time. I'm just doing it for aero advantage. Let's scooch over to the right because they've gone faster than 70 now. We have been cruising along. Beautiful conditions, beautiful weather, fun with the live stream guys here. We are at 90% state of charge right now. And got to go to this menu here. We've driven 26.2 miles. So if everything stayed the same, in theory, we would do about 260, 270 miles on a full charge. It's very possible we'll see that. I'm not quite sure. The truck's predicting 267 remaining. And again, 26.5 driven so far. Well, we're only 10% into this test. Time to rock it a little bit longer. I've set the ride to stiff, by the way. I find that it helps the suspension from maxing out over big bumps. And while it is a little bit bumpy over smaller stuff, I think it's worth the ride penalty just to reduce some of the bounciness. On initial impression, I'll update once I spend more time hitting more bumps, seeing how it feels. But so far, just loving this truck. I do wish we had driver assistance available though, but for some reason it's not. And just cruising along, enjoying it. Welcome to Nebraska, the good life. Here we are cruising through. The lane centering kicked on for a little bit, and now it's back off because it lost mapping, I guess. It said the road wasn't mapped here, so at least it pushes you in the lines if you hit a line. Just cruising along. Nice tailwind, huge efficiency with a tailwind. Huge efficiency with a tailwind, really nice. And just absolutely loving this truck, loving the way it drives. It's fantastic. Just a quick note on the driver assistance. You can see if I try to enable it, it says it's unavailable until my next drive. And the reason for that is back in Wyoming, the vehicle was on driver assistance. It was doing a great job. And it popped up with a message that said, hey, the road's not mapped. Please take over. And of course, the live audience and I wanted to see what happened if I didn't take over. And so we just let it go until it, basically shut down the system and hit the brakes. And now I'm in Rivian jail because it's kind of like autopilot jail, where it just says, nope, sorry, you have to cycle the drive. You're not allowed to use our lane centering. Pretty smart system. They really force you to do it. I don't mind it when it does this, but when we're doing a range test, I can't necessarily just stop the car. So I think when we do our loop to flip around, I'll get out, get back in, and that'll cycle the drive cycle. And hopefully driver assistance will be back by then. We are now at 75% state of charge, and I feel like we've just been driving a long time. The range is impressive. Now keep in mind, we've had this tailwind pushing us along. So what we need to do is figure out our turnaround point. But first, let me give you some data. So if I take a look here at the screen, and I go. We've driven 84.4 miles. We've used 32 kilowatt hours, and we've averaged 2.64 miles per kilowatt hour. So that's really not bad, but again, tailwind. As soon as we turn around, we're going to get hammered. So our turnaround strategy is going to be targeting somewhere between 60 and 63% state of charge, I think, and then we can loop around on I-25 closer back to the charging station. But I'd rather at least get the truck back over there and continue with the loops closer to the charger, rather than having this big unknown as to what the headwind is going to kill us with on the way over. So we'll start looking here in a little bit for a turnaround, maybe in the next 30 miles or so, something like that, maybe more or less. And as soon as we start getting around there. But the truck is predicting 222 miles. We've driven 85.3. All is looking good. Just so you have the visual data here, 221 miles predicted. Here's how far we've gone up to this point. You can see 2.59 miles per kilowatt hour now, and we are at 75% state of charge. And we are approaching our turnaround exit point. We have about 66% state of charge. I'm just kicking it off 70 miles an hour right here. The reason we're turning around a little bit early is because we've had that tailwind hammering behind us, and I want to counteract that with a headwind. We looked at the wind maps, and it looks like as the day progresses, the wind is actually going to be dying down a little bit, and that's not what we want. We want the same wind both directions. So we're turning off a little bit early to go get the same type of wind speed on the way back. You can see we have 66%, 194 miles. We've driven 120.7, and very efficient, 3.22 miles per kilowatt hour the last 15 minutes and 2.74 since we left. That's about to all drop massively going the other way. The one thing I want to do though really quick is just cycle the drive cycle here to reactivate the driver assistance. So let's come to a stop, seatbelt unbuckled, park, open the door, wade out of the seat, ready. It should drop here in a second, I think. Hold on. Let's try this thing. We're out, closed, we're in. Yep, vehicle's back on. And now we should be good to go back the other direction. So seatbelt on, into drive, and now it should re-enable driver assistance. I hope, we'll see. Should be an interesting test. Conserve mode, let's make sure everything's still the same. Lowest, ride stiff, conserve, that's the way we want it. Now we're gonna do our loop and get hammered with the headwind while it's still rocking, which is exactly what we want. Man, the motors in this have to be some of the best sounding electric motors ever put in a vehicle. I love that they didn't hide it. It sounds so cool. Here we go, gentle accelerations on the way up. Already conserve mode limits your peak power output. Again, we're only using 2 motors, and I don't even think it uses up to 100% of them unless you really have some speed on. But if you nail it from a dig in conserve mode, it's pretty lethargic. As expected, that's what you would want from an efficiency perspective. And let's get the speed up to 70 miles an hour. Again, 73 indicated. So a little bit of throttle down action here. I can already feel and hear the headwind hitting us now. 73, locked in, boom. There we go. And it is showing, put hands on the wheel first. My hands are on the wheel. Don't worry. Oh, you hear that headwind? That's what we've been waiting for. Hands on the wheel. Let's see. It's unavailable right now, but that might just be because it's not mapped or we're in a construction zone. At least it's not telling me it's unavailable for that drive cycle. So we should be able to get driver assistance on the way back. You can see here the effect that range has, or I should say wind has, on efficiency. The left half of that graph is when we have the tailwind. The current graph is with the headwind. Even so, it's predicting 2 miles per kilowatt hour, which really isn't bad. And yeah, I'm thinking this will actually go pretty far at a charge. I think having the ride in stiff with conserve mode, like I showed you earlier, well, you get the idea, is actually pretty good for not maxing the suspension out. That might be the move for road trip stuff. It's a little bumpier, but it's not bouncier. We are now at 50% state of charge. The truck is predicting 147 miles remaining. Even with the headwind, you can see we're getting pretty, like I mentioned, just under 2 miles per kilowatt hour was my guess, and we're at 1.72 for the last 15 minutes with this headwind. That's why we run a loop style test. And if we look at the thing, we've done 156 miles. So that even with this, the truck is predicting just about 300 miles on a charge. And I am impressed by that. I don't actually think it's going to go that far. But man, wouldn't it be crazy if this thing hits 300? I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Either way, it's got plenty of range. And the driver assistance, in mapped roads like it is here, it's really, really, really good. I'm a fan. When it does work, it's just picky about when it wants to turn on. In terms of tire pressures, Rivian recommends 48 PSI set when cold. Of course, while driving, they'll warm up a little bit. But interestingly, the two on the left side are at 50 PSI, and that's because the sun is over on the left side. So just heating up the left tires a little bit more than the right. We are at 25% state of charge, and we are now heading south towards Fort Collins. We've gone through the brunt of it. The headwinds are now over. So regenning here for the big loop, and now we're just going to try and maintain as much speed as we can realistically get through here. The truck handles so great. Look at this thing. Really flat cornering, great driving feel. And so what we're going to do now is head back towards Wellington. We'll probably have some extra juice there, so we might loop around one more time up I-25. I don't think we'll make it all the way back to Cheyenne and back, but close enough. So let's go run this thing all the way out now that we have that we're heading due south back on I-25. Again, 25% state of charge. Let's just go to 73, lock it in, and I'll at least let you know how far we've driven. 212.7 miles so far. Looking good. And we are just going by the Budweiser factory or some sort of distribution center. I'm pretty sure they brew there. And we're going to loop around. We've actually gone past where we started, and we're just trying to run it all the way out. So we're going to stick around on I-25. I just don't want to go too far south because then the traffic starts picking up and it might be hard to maintain 70 miles an hour. So let's take this loop around, head back to the north, and keep going until we run out of charge at 70 miles an hour. Well, hopefully we don't run out of charge at 70. We'll pull into the charger pretty low though. We are now down to 7% state of charge. We're on our final stretch here. You can see the truck is predicting 21 miles of range, which is very convenient because it's 19 miles to get to the fueling station where the charge point chargers are at. The truck actually doesn't think we can make it there. We're going to show it wrong, or it'll show us wrong. Either way, it'll make for a good YouTube video. So let's rock and roll up 3.8 miles. We'll bust a U-turn, head back, and see what the range is on this thing at 70 miles an hour constant. And we're coming up to our final loop here. I'm kicking it off of cruise control right there. And let's go make a U-turn. 16 miles projected, 15 miles to our charging station. That number looks good to me. And one thing we do need to do is actually GPS verify the distance that we've driven, because we've been traveling at 73 miles per hour. And so the range that the truck says will probably be a little bit higher than what we've actually done. So we're going to obviously get what the truck says. And then after we plug this thing in, you'll join me probably back at the office or something. We'll crunch some numbers, and I'll give you the actual range that the truck went, because it's probably going to show a little bit better efficiency than what we did do, and it's probably going to be a little bit longer range than what we actually did as well. Gentle accelerations as usual. We don't want to pull a lot of current out of the pack, especially at low states of charge. You want to be very gentle on electric cars. I'm seeing no increased power loss even down here at, let's see, at 5% state of charge. Conserve mode is still showing the exact same power that we could normally do before. And so we're just going to ease up to 70 miles an hour. 1, 2, 3. Inch it up there. There we go. Oh, went a little bit too far. 73. Locked in. And now what we'll probably do is pull off at the exit for the charger and then drive it down off sort of more rural roads where we can do 55 or 60 or so. We have 1 mile to our exit. We're at 2% state of charge. It says the battery's almost empty. These are all the notifications that have popped up. So let's pull off here at our charger. I will let you know how far we've gone. According to the truck, that's how far we've gone at 70 miles an hour. I don't want the live stream audience to know. Now they're gonna have to live in unknowing for a few hours until this video gets posted. But that's how far it says we've gone. Pulling off the highway here, a little bit of regen. Wonderful, wonderful test. Great wind counteracting. I'm very pleased with how this test went. I'm glad we waited till today. The temperatures remained between 51 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit the entire time. I believe, at least, I didn't see it go outside of that range. Very consistent. And overall, just a very pleasant experience driving this for the last few hours. Now what we're going to do is, of course, drive down some back roads, and I can tell that the available power here has gone down a little bit because we're at low states of charge. And what we don't want to do is obviously romp on it. We're going to very gently drive it down till 0, and that's going to show us 2 things. 1, how many kilowatt hours we can pull out of the pack, and 2, the second is going to be, of course, the range. And that's what everyone wants to know. But I'm also curious about usable capacity. So let's drive it till she pretty much feels like it's gonna die. What do you say? Nice Hummer H1 over here. That thing is sick. He's looking at us, we're looking at him. Let's go past our chargers here and go cruise around at about 50-55 miles an hour, although maybe not behind this moving truck if he pulls out. But we'll just cruise around until it's dead. We now have reached 1% state of charge, 3 miles remaining. We're just cruising along between 50 and 55 miles an hour. Definitely a little bit bouncy in conserve mode with the suspension aired all the way out, but just truly gonna go until it pretty much is dead. The power meter is closing in on us quick though. It's really saying, hey, there's not much down here, so be mindful. And actually, if you hit a little hard throttle, it goes black. We're gonna try not to do that though. We don't want to get into that grayed out area too much. And we have just hit 1 mile projected. You can see there's an exclamation point there. It's funny that it's waited all the way until then to tell us 1%, 1 mile. So this kind of indicates to me that 0 might be true 0. Anyway, I think we're at least a mile away. Yeah, 1.3 miles away from the charger. So I say let's head over there and maybe regroup and see if we can get another mile out of it. Maybe not. Either way, it feels like we're at the bottom of the pack to me. The available power is just so low. We're using almost half of it just to maintain 50 miles an hour, which is not that fast. So yeah, let's go bring her over to the charger. We have 0% state of charge and 0 miles remaining, but the regen just pulled us up to 1 mile. That is the benefit of regen right there. Anyway, let's bring it over to the charger. Maybe we'll do one more loop around the parking lot just to eke everything out of it. 0 miles, 0%. What do you think? A loop around the parking lot for good measure? The truck feels pretty, feels like we're pretty much out. I'm sure there's a little bit of buffer here. Look at this old Defender. That thing is so sick. That is awesome. Love that. 0%, 0 miles. I say we just plug it in. We're not near like 300 miles. If it was like 299.6, I'd say, all right, I'll push this thing for that 300 number, but we're not anywhere near there. Let's bring her on in. She's completely dead. Throttle's pretty squishy, I gotta say, like really squishy. This is the charger we've been using most of the time this week. It's been dumping a ton of kilowatt hours into this truck. And stopping, boom. All right, I muted the live stream so they can't hear me. Let's take a look at the numbers. We have gone 289.3 miles according to the truck. We've pulled 124 kilowatt hours out of it. I would say there's probably and likely another kilowatt hour or 2 at most we could pull out of this. I don't know. Tesla has a 3 kilowatt hour bottom buffer strategy. Some cars like Audi and Porsche shut off as soon as you hit 0. Like they're like, that's literally it. And so here, 289.3 miles at 70 miles an hour, took 4 hours, 20 minutes, and 2.33 miles per kilowatt hour. Let's get it charging. So we got the charger activated. Let's plug it in. We'll open up the charging port, pull down the DC pins, grab the CCS connection, and in we go. 0% state of charge. Pack voltage is going to be low with 200 amps. We probably won't get more than 70 kilowatts or so. You join us back at the office. I love these views here at the powerhouse. We are so lucky to work out of here. I actually have to run down on a road trip right now, so I'm just getting this video out and uploaded for you. Let's crunch GPS numbers because this is where it gets pretty interesting. The Rivian shows 73 miles per hour indicated is a true 70 GPS, but I think the vehicle actually knows how far it's gone because I've just run all the calculations through Google Maps. I'll walk you through it and you guys check my math, but I think the truck actually did what it said and it might actually have read under a little bit. Let me show you. Here we are at the iMac with Google Maps. I've programmed in our drive. So let's start one by one. We left the ChargePoint charging station. Boom. We then went up to Nebraska, and what I've selected is, whoops, don't do that. What I've selected here in Nebraska is exit 48 where we turned around. You know, we followed the road, pulled over here, made the U-turn, and then jumped back in and went on the highway back west to Cheyenne. We then did, instead of, you know, this is the way we went on, we did the loop. We went around, and then we went back down to not that exit. We came all the way down to here, which would be Mountain Vista Drive. We then looped back on. Now, I think because I pulled this screen, it's actually refreshed a little bit, so I don't want to risk losing it, but you guys get the idea. This is what Google Maps, it actually follows the actual roads. But I think me pulling it out of this tab unlocked the visuals a little bit. And I'm worried if I hit restart, it's going to take me forever to lay this map out again. But here we go. Then we went past everything. We went up to County Road in Carr, Colorado. So that's here where we looped around, right? We went off back on the highway. Again, Google Maps knows the roads. And then we went to what they call the Poudre School District, what they're calling it as. And that is along the frontage road right here where we spun around, right? And then this is where we were doing 55 mile an hour loops. Then we plugged back in the ChargePoint station and it claims 292 miles. Now, I'm not sure how it's calculating in and out of parking lots distance, but basically what this shows me is that on the truck itself, it seems to be pretty dang accurate. So there you have it. Even though the speedometer reads over, I think the mileage is actually correct in the trip computer, and we drove roughly 290 miles on a single charge in the Rivian R1T with the 20-inch all-terrain tires. If you had the aero wheels and tires, and maybe even the sport wheels, this might require some testing in the future. This is a 300-mile range vehicle at 70 miles an hour, which is truly impressive. With an EPA range of 314 miles, I don't think I've actually mentioned that in the video. The EPA in the mix cycle rates this vehicle at 314 miles, and we did 290 sitting at 70. Impressive. It's got a big battery, but it seems to be very efficient in conserve mode. Now I'm about to take it on a road trip for our sister channel, Out of Spec Motoring, to see if it's worth the trade-off, basically, in the bouncy ride of conserve mode versus maybe just driving it in all-purpose and eating a little bit of efficiency loss. Anyway, time to hit the road. I'm gonna get that video out. Hope you guys enjoyed another Out of Spec Reviews range test. 70 miles an hour in the Rivian R1T. Very impressive, not fatiguing. Love the truck. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.